"Stop staring, sweetheart. People will think we're beggars." The mother's whisper trembled as she tugged her daughter's hand toward the door, but before they could leave, a deep voice broke the silence. "Hey." Wait. The man at the next table looked up from his meal, his eyes kind but firm. Let her eat. That one sentence would change 3 lives forever. The café was alive with chatter, spoons clinking, coffee steaming, and the comforting hum of morning life. But at the farthest table, by the fogged-up window, Lena sat perfectly still, a paper napkin clutched in her trembling hands. Across from her sat Amelia, her little girl, 6 years old, bright eyes, small hands, and an empty stomach trying not to growl loud enough for strangers to hear. Lena had ordered 1 cup of tea, the cheapest thing on the menu. It wasn't for her. It was so they wouldn't be asked to leave. She tried to sip slowly, pretending she wasn't dizzy with hunger, pretending her daughter wasn't staring at the plate of pancakes on the next table. "Sweetheart," she whispered, forcing a smile. "Look out the window, not at the food." Amelia nodded, but her eyes lingered 1 second too long. And that's when Ethan, the man sitting nearby, noticed. Ethan was tall, with tired eyes and rough hands that told stories of long days. His suit was cheap, his tie loose, and his meal simple: scrambled eggs, toast, and a cup of black coffee. He had been eating in silence, lost in his thoughts, until he saw that little girl staring at his plate. She didn't look greedy. She looked hungry. He watched as Lena gently pulled her closer and whispered, "We should go." Her tone wasn't angry. It was heartbroken. When they stood to leave, Ethan did something impulsive. "Wait." The word came out stronger than he intended. Everyone nearby glanced up. Lena froze. I'm sorry. We're leaving." He shook his head, stood up, and spoke softly. "You don't have to go." He pulled out his wallet, signaled the waiter, and said, "Bring them 2 breakfasts. Pancakes. With extra syrup." Lena's face went pale. "No, please. That's not necessary." "It is," he said firmly but kindly. "She's hungry." Lena's lips quivered. "We're not charity." Ethan smiled faintly. "Neither am I." The waiter returned minutes later with steaming pancakes, butter melting slowly down the sides. Amelia stared at them, her eyes wide as moons. "Go ahead," Ethan said gently. "They're yours." Lena hesitated, but when Amelia whispered, "Mommy, please," she gave in. The little girl's first bite was slow, cautious. Then she smiled, giggled even, as if she'd just tasted happiness itself. Ethan sat back, his heart twisting in his chest. He remembered that look. His daughter used to smile like that, before he lost her mother, before everything fell apart. He didn't speak for a while, just watched them eat in peace. When Amelia had finished, she leaned back in her chair and sighed contentedly. "Thank you, mister," she said softly. Ethan smiled. "You're welcome, little one. You have great manners," Lena whispered. "You didn't have to do that." "I know," he said. "But sometimes we do things because we remember." "Remember what?" she asked quietly. He looked at her. "What it feels like to have nothing." Lena's eyes softened. "You've been there too." He nodded, more than once. "Lost my wife 3 years ago. I've been raising my son alone. There were nights I went hungry so he could eat." She swallowed hard. "That's brave." "No," he said. "That's being a parent." For the first time in years, Lena smiled at a stranger. Not out of politeness, but because he understood. When Ethan asked where she worked, her silence said everything. "I'm looking," she said finally, "but nobody wants to hire a woman with a child and no car." He thought for a moment, then reached into his bag and pulled out a business card. "My company's hiring cleaning staff. It's not glamorous, but the pay's fair and the manager's kind." Lena stared at the card. "You're offering me a job?" He smiled. "No, I'm offering you a start." Her voice shook. "Why?" "Because once someone did the same for me." She nodded slowly, eyes glistening. "Thank you," he shrugged. Just promise me one thing. What? He looked down at Amelia, smiling. That you'll never have to stare at another plate again. 2 weeks later, Lena showed up at the company, nervous. Clutching that same business card, the receptionist smiled. Mr. Carter said to expect you. Her eyes widened. Mr. Carter? The woman nodded. Yes, Ethan Carter. He's the owner. Lena froze. Owner? The man who'd sat beside her, wearing a cheap suit, was a billionaire philanthropist, one who secretly visited his own businesses to understand how people lived. That day, she started her job as a janitor, and Ethan made sure she was treated with respect. Within months, she was promoted to staff supervisor, but that wasn't the biggest surprise. 6 months later, the company hosted a charity event for underprivileged families. Lena helped organize it. When Ethan arrived with his son, she walked up smiling. You never told me you owned the company. He chuckled. You never asked. They laughed. Amelia tugged at his sleeve. Mr. Ethan, do you remember the pancakes? He crouched down, smiling warmly. I do, Amelia grinned. Mommy makes them for me every Sunday now. He looked up at Lena. Then I guess it was a good investment. Lena's voice trembled. You didn't just feed us. You gave us a life back. He shook his head. You did that yourself. I just saw what you were too tired to believe, that you still deserved a chance. Months later, Lena opened a small bakery, funded partly by Ethan's foundation. She called it Amelia's Table. Every day, she served fresh bread and hot meals for anyone who couldn't afford to pay. On the wall hung a sign that read, Inspired by the man who shared his plate and changed our fate. Ethan visited often, sometimes alone, sometimes with his son, and every time, Lena greeted him the same way, with warmth, gratitude, and 2 steaming cups of tea. He'd always say, You've done well, Lena, and she'd always reply, Because you believed before I could. In a world where pride often wins over kindness, this story reminds us you never lose by being generous. You only lose when you look away, because sometimes the smallest gesture, a meal, a smile, a moment, can rewrite someone's entire life story. If this story touched your heart, comment where you're watching from.